What's happening, guys? My name is Sumedh Chatterjee from the Flow Zone Academy. I'm also known as Dr. Scripps from IMC Nation. I'm also known as Scripps. By the way, shout out to Monk Life Records because I'm dropping a banger this month called Priest Beast. The song is called Priest Beast. I wanted to talk a little bit around music and spirituality. Okay, this is a very controversial topic for some as well, and I understand why it can be. Okay, because if you look at the music industry right now out there, there's a lot of weird stuff happening in the background. Okay, a lot of corruption, a lot of just record labels kind of overpowering the artists and artists not getting paid and all of these little, pockets or intricacies. But I don't want you to focus on that right now. I want you to focus on the positive. What is the positive of music? It gets you to free your mind. It gets you to go into an altered state of consciousness. It allows you to drift along with a specific kind of rhythm or pattern that is there. So essentially, music is feminine energy. It's a tool for amplification of condensed emotions. Now, music doesn't necessarily lock into logic, reason, or sanity. In fact, to be a musician, you have to get a little bit transcendental. You have to allow your mind to drift off into that metaphysical space in order for the music to come through. So what a lot of artists do is they say that I'm the artist and I'm the one who's taking control and credit of all of these different thoughts and ideas, when you know damn well that there is some other source, some other energy coming through you, okay, in certain moments. I would say transmutation, to take a negative experience or a positive experience or whatever it is that you're going through, transmuting it into my music is so powerful, okay? Because it allows me as an artist to take the material that I'm being given and then put it into or channel it or construct it into something meaningful to give back to society, right? And that message can shift other people around the world too. Right now, we're focusing on this archetype of the priest beast. If you're unfamiliar with the priest beast, we talk about it in Primal Sutra, this idea of this integrated man, okay? He's not too in his feminine nature, he's not too in his masculine nature. He has a good balance of both of his masculine and feminine polarities, okay? And he's able to stay in a particular pocket. That doesn't mean that his feminine quality overrides his masculine quality as a man, because you still have to go out there and get shit done and do things and be effective in this world, right? You can't just float around in cloud nine all the time and just go from rave to rave, okay? Though that's fun, yeah, and some people can afford to do that, that's great. I also want to change the world as I'm partying it up, okay? I don't want to just go along and drift. You see a lot of musicians, they drift off into this nothingness, this cave that they're in, right? Because they're so in the internal world that it's difficult for them to function outside of music. And that becomes a dangerous craft, actually, if you think about it in that sense, okay? I want you to think of music as a devotion to a specific deity that you really believe in, or an energy or frequency that you really believe in. Even if you really believe in yourself and you believe that my music is going to guide me to do something else. A lot of artists say don't listen to your own music and all this stuff. I say go ahead and listen to your music, because how else are you going to critically improve yourself and gain more feedback if you're not listening to your own songs, okay? And it's almost got to come to a point where you got to vibe out to your own music, right? You got to vibe out to your own tracks, but also you got to vibe out to different genres of music and different things that might actually, guide you towards a transcendental experience. The issue with music nowadays is, and we know this whole, 432 hertz versus 440 hertz, there's like a whole debate around that. The staple, frequency for the music industry and so forth. However, there are certain studies that show that one raises more blood pressure, one, brings the blood pressure down and things like this. So I want you to take the mainstream music that you have right now, okay? And look at all of the artists and so forth. As a spiritual man or spiritual woman watching this, or if you're at least interested in that metaphysicality or, getting to the best version of you, you are fascinated by the ideas of music. It's either so diluted or it's like super poppy, like bubblegum. So that stuff is great when it can be amplified in a great way, right? But the issue becomes is a lot of the music that you're listening to nowadays is like a Coke and a rum compared to like green tea of what it could be, okay? Now, you don't have to go all the way into whiskey land, and you don't have to go all the way into green tea land. You can be somewhere in between as well, and that's what I want to speak to you guys about. Listen to this artist. His name is Free Soul, F-R 33SOL, okay? So his name is spelled free with threes, 2 3s for the E's. It's very interesting because we've talked about this concept of soul being spelt as SOL, taking away the you, right? The identity or the ego from it, getting us back to our solar nature as men, right? Our sunlight energy, that yang essence, that we can just go out and crush it with that energy, right? You know this yourself, ladies. If you listen to moon music, you get what I mean by moon music, okay? Lunar, slow, seductive R&B tones that put you into such a seductive state where you're doing your makeup or whatever, girls. That, for a man, there's a specific quality of music that taps him into his masculine energy and masculine essence. And for a woman, there's certain music, moon music, I call it, the energy of the lunar cycle, and going like even synchronizing your menstrual cycle, your period, with certain kinds of songs, right? When you know your period's about to hit, you can even, change the songs up in a sense to boost your mood and amplify maybe feeling good in some sense, okay? A stay in bed, maybe chill playlist or something like this, right? When you listen to a specific tone or a tune that comes into your mind that you're just humming, that comes through meditation, that's pure. But there's nothing pure about emotions, okay? There's nothing sacred about emotions. Emotions are just the byproduct of, energy in motion. Understand logically that everything in this universe is based on sine waves. I mean, if you take the flower of life, which actually Da Vinci drew out, if you guys don't know about this, that's how he got to some of these understandings of certain inventions that he made. But not only that, that flower of life can go into harmonics and it can go into music as well. It goes into the fruit of life, Metatron's cube, maybe looking like a Sri Yantra or sacred geometry type pattern. And it's interesting that these weird mathematics are connected too, like average length between two eyes is 7.23, and that's the same resonance as Om. I think a lot of times we revere musicians because they can tap into that flow, right? They can tap into that state and make us as the audience feel into that state. So you listening to music could be your bhakti, for instance, right? For instance, you have Swami Prabhupada, who went to the West and popularized the whole Hare Krishna movement or the ISKCON community, right? Through that practice, it's basically keeping yourself in a celebratory mood or this ascension state, in a sense, where you're rising with the energy of that devotional singing and chanting the mantra. Might have seen these people, right? Just chanting, clapping along in the streets, like walking along, right? These different Hare Krishna movement people. It's interesting. It's cool seeing Western kids with like little tikis in the back and like, eating vegetarian food and like going to the ashrams. It's kind of interesting to me, at least from an outside perspective as an Indian, to look at that and be like, whoa, that's kind of lit. That's interesting how you've adopted this complete belief system and way of life. So understand that one person can come along and change the entire music industry like that. And I'm giving that as an example, right? And obviously you don't want to popularize something like you don't want to go to the club and like dance to the Gayatri mantra. You know what I mean? It's like, yeah, that's cool, but it's in the wrong context, okay? Unless you have Hindu priests there fist pumping in the corner, it's not gonna make sense for that particular, event or rave that you got into, okay? So that's not spiritual. Going to a psytrance festival, that's partly spiritual. Maybe there's certain metaphysical or spiritual influences, but that's also not spiritual. Unless you're talking about the spirituality of group think and this kind of hive mind, feeling the vibe in a sense. Everybody's kind of feeling that group flow, that environment, right? And so there's that interconnectedness that we want to reach with spirituality, that sense of oneness or devotion to the task at hand, listening to the truth beyond the instruments and the sounds and the words, right? Now the issue is we live in a very narcissistic type of culture, bro, and that's the thing, right? Like we all want to be the center of attention. There's probably thousands of people, going online and trying to get their mixtapes heard and so forth. It's a climb, it's a struggle, man, it's a grind. And I get that as an artist too. You guys can check out my music. It's on SoundCloud and Spotify, and I'm about to drop this song soon. But I see the entire universe as an entire spectrum of octaves. I see the universe through the lens of music, through a musician's eyes, through a rapper's eyes, in a sense. I'm a rapper, right? So record a lot of music inspired by hip hop. I grew up listening to a lot of 8 Mile and a lot of underground artists. Then my taste slowly merged and changed into more of the new school and the new wave stuff. And then now it's just merging into completely new genres. And At one point, I was trying to create my own genre, calling it DMT trap, right? DM trap. And that's what you got to do sometimes as a musician. Is I see myself more so like an audio shaman rather than a musician. You get what I mean? Like, I'm being called upon to create this music to have a very specific effect on someone who listens to it, who taps them into a very particular state as they listen to it. You can't have music in the unwise, unmeditative hands, okay, of somebody. They're gonna use music as an escape. They're gonna use music to escape reality all the time, right? Avoid everything. Whereas spirituality is about embracing everything. It's not about hiding. Now, you might be going through a spiritual experience or a spiritual awakening right now as you're watching this video, thinking that, oh, I'm so sensitive, I can't get along with others, and therefore I need music in order to thrive. That's completely valid. But also understand your emotions come from your primal desires. They come from greed, lust, obsession, lots of these different things that are going to pull you into various directions and kind of skew you. Usually it's interesting to notice that, the differences between religions and so forth. Now, I know that Islam says that you're not allowed to have music and so forth, but I think that it's also interesting to note that they're also stating that no, actually you can have music, but it's only got to be for the highest purposes. If you're recreationally using music and you're letting it corrupt you and corrupt your ears and like melt your brain, and you understand that it's your evolutionary self that's tapping you into these emotions that are like pulling you in various directions in your mind. Emotion is below thought. Don't be misled by emotions. Stop romanticizing everything. Emotions can be very, very deceptive. You gotta put thoughtfulness into your music practice, meditation into your musical practice. Sentimentality is not the same thing as sensitivity. Emotions want you to preserve your ego self and keep you stuck and keep you in the particular paradigm. But now, what if you intentionally use music for the betterment of yourself and the world at large? That becomes a different experience altogether. Man, listening to this song right now is just putting me into such a vibe, such a good mood that I can take on anything. I can do this, I can have that, I can make sure that this is taken care of. I can feel through that very specific temporary moment for me to pump up and do something. But don't use it as a crutch either. Just use it as a guidance, as a resource, okay? It's a tool. You've got to use it as a tool. Don't let that tool take you by the hand and drag you down into its dark depths, okay? Because once you start to identify with it and you're like, oh, I'm goth, man, I only listen to sad emo music. Now you're completely submerging yourself into this weird subcultural soup, right? And you're making maybe your consciousness is lowering, you're getting depressed, and all these different dark thoughts and ideas are getting attached to your aura, and now you're like you're sinking down with that, right? But then there's a great little emo song you hear once in a blue moon, and it kind of makes you feel good, and you feel all the emotions for that one moment, and you're not attached to it anymore, right? And it doesn't affect your identity, you're like change you around, right? One could say that, hey, you look kind of harmonious in the sense of you have like a hip-hop kind of identity right now, like you have a backwards cap, you have an earring, you have all this kind of stuff on. I want to mention this artist because I think it's a very, very powerful example of how music can really inspire and transcend your archetype. So let's take the example of Saint Lavon, okay? The artist, he's, I believe he is Middle Eastern and French together, and he uses both of these in his music. And the way that he says things, like, got you overthinking all your texts, got you overthinking all your texts, got you overthinking all your texts, right? He's really feeling himself, and he understands, he knows he's attractive. That quality comes across in the music when you listen to it, right? And I think that a lot of people can address that seductive quality that someone can emit. Don't get so seduced by the music that you drift off into nothingness, but understand it for the influence, right? The influence and the power that it actually holds. A great example being Saint Lavon, who's probably making ladies' panties wet all across the globe with that song. Any man can tap into that essence. You get it? What he's tapping into is that way, you see? The effortless effort. Someone wants to sit back in the building. Okay, whatever he's saying, right? You gotta understand, you're getting swept up by that energy because that man is optimizing the siren energy in the male form. You gotta understand that. Okay, we usually talk about mermaids and female sirens. This is a male siren example, or at least close enough to it, where we start to understand that the power of what he's really tapping into, which is a very, very special kind of sauce, I think. But I would say that hip hop actually helps me to ground myself, okay? Ground myself, Rudrakshpis, okay? It helps me to get back in touch with the roots because, listen, we all came from Africa. Know about some of the secrets of the melanin in your skin and so forth, right? There's a lot in the music industry that's being left unsaid. This is why we have something so powerful like Monk Life Records out. Shout out to Zay, by the way, who's one of the founders of this, and Master myself, and you know, a few others who are putting this together. I think it's going to be very, very powerful. I think IMC Nation is going to rise with this because it's really, really important we start making music that's going to point out all the weird shit that's also happening around the world, but also we got to share the vibe that we have, you know, as a tribe. So let's get it today. I hope you enjoyed this video. Give it a like and thumbs up. Share the content. I hope you enjoyed yourself. Let's go! May we never be the same again, Upward Spiral Gang. May the flow be with you. Us.